the Eye Test with Eric and Brady. We've got another fabulous guest today. We're going to talk about sports from a little bit different perspective with me as a photographer, Brady as a writer. Thanks for being here and enjoy the show. All right, well, welcome back to the Eye Test. We've been a little inconsistent lately due to some scheduling conflicts and practice schedules,
spring
football work, and so we've been a little inconsistent, but we'll get back on track here. I'm glad to have everybody here. It's gonna be Brady and I today. We had to reschedule yet another guest, and we decided that, well, mostly I decided that I was tired of freaking waiting and keep pushing it off. So let's get one in here. One thing we've been talking about today, or not just today, but lately, was, and I think both you and I are getting the same read from practices down in Lincoln. And the way, because I have friends that ask me, what kind of vibe I'm getting from practices. And the only way I can describe it is it's very much a blue-collar, workman-like attitude right now. Not like it's been in the past. We won't name other coaches. But there's none of that music.
Yeah,
I mean, there's some, but it's not.
If they played, it's like during warm-ups and stretching, not right. During the
But there's none of that. How should we say? Fake it till you make it, cheer, rah stuff going on.
Yeah,
it's very business-like. And as somebody who's covered the Huskers for a hot second, it feels very old and familiar.
Yeah,
that it's very. I just want to say workmanlike. Like they don't spend a lot of time patting each other on the back and hyping each other up. They just, well, like I say to my own son, just do the work.
Yeah.
Just do the work.
Yeah. I mean, they get after them. They're a very energetic, but a very detail-oriented coaching staff. I mean, like if a player doesn't do something textbook, they will, point it out, have them do it again and point it and like really coach them up to that point. But again, if somebody does it perfect to a T, they're not rolling out the ticker tape parade for them.
Right.
They just did their job, but they're also reassuring of like, hey, perfect, great job. They're reinforcing the positivity when they do something right. And it is very
doing something novel, like coaching.
Yeah. Well, and then they, sometimes they'll even let to your point about workmanlike, they aren't afraid to let some of their personalities out. Like Evan Cooper and Garrett McGuire are very involved. Evan Cooper will be, he'll kind of, it's like, oh, I'm out on one today. And like kind of he likes to kind of jaw at his guys a little bit, but it gets them involved. And also their defensive backs, they're going to get yapped at and talked at during a game.
Well, do their own fair share of
having your coach do that for practice though, like to you.
Right.
I mean, that's
that's also how you build relationships.
Exactly. And
right. And they're on the fast track of building relationships. Like we need to bond with these guys quick.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. And that was a big, a focus point from the coaching staff this spring, or I guess in winter workouts and everything, because they knew we were going to coach them up hard, but it's easy for guys to get coached hard and aggressive because what did Matt Rule say? It's a comforting, not coddling environment that they want to foster. And it would be easy for some guys to say like, they get difficult or hard coaching. They say, man, I don't like this. But again, winter workouts and in the off season and off the field, the coaching staff lets you know how much they care. And how much like we're here to help you, which softens the blow.
Yeah, very much that environment, and as I probably sometimes talk about my own kids too much, but it's the best example I have for things. With my youngest, who's a freshman now, I told him going into high school, and I've always told him that don't worry and don't take it personal if your coach is on your ass about doing it right. Be worried when he's not.
Yeah.
Right. Because if they care, they're gonna set expectations. They're gonna hold you to it, but they're not going to expect anything from you that they don't think you can do. So if they stop setting high expectations for you, that's when you got a problem.
Yeah. It's the silence that you should be worried about.
Yeah. The day that coaches stop caring whether or not you give effort or not is the day you're done.
Yeah.
So always give the effort. And as I've been thinking about this, contrasting it against some of the previous coaching staffs, the problem the problem that I see with the fake it till you make it attitude, that kind of that to me, that's what it felt like before. Like they were trying to make them believe it by through the fake it till you make it attitude, right? And the problem I have with that, and even in my own profession, is that's all well and good until you don't make it.
Yeah.
Or you don't make it according to the time frame expectations you thought you should have. Then you have absolutely nothing to fall back on.
Yeah.
And I've never, in my own profession and out there in the photography talk groups and all of that kind of stuff, you hear a lot of people with the fake it till you make it attitude. And that's, you just got to be careful with that, because you have to remember that there are people out there who have made it, or they know better.
Yeah.
And they know when they're hearing fake.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So I much prefer what I suspect. None of us know for sure, because we're just kind of putting together bits and pieces of information. But it certainly feels like Matt is really, there's no fake it till you make it to him. It is just do the work, and the results will come. Put your trust in the work, and the results will come. And that, that's my take on that, I guess.
No, well, and I think it comes across in how Matt, because I reread one of his favorite books, The World's Greatest Salesman by Og Mandino. I read yesterday.
Do you have that quote memorized yet?
I don't have the whole full block quote memorized, but it's only 110 pages, and those who are familiar with the book might recognize it. It's the first, I want to say 55, 60 pages are basically like an introduction, and the book is meant to be consumed in like 3 compartments, where you have the front, you reread that about like 40 days at a time, then you reread the middle part 40 days.
Gotcha.
Is how the author meant it to be done. But it's basically just self-affirmation, and like I will persist until I succeed. There's a long block quote, and for those who are familiar, even Evan Cooper likes it so much, he's got this quote in his Twitter bio still: "The slaughterhouse of failure will not be my destiny." It's very that culture. Like I will continue to grind, and every day will be a blessing. Any day that is not successful is not a day spent. He who fails or does not fail does not try, kind of thing.
Right.
And at the root of it, that's the mentality. And I do tend to believe that there's no sense of fake it till you make it on this coaching staff. And because I think interacting with Matt a little bit, that's the sense I get from him. I also am not a big fake it till you make it guy. Like I'll go to like the Outland and the Remington trophy ceremonies and things where, like, let's be honest here, I'm from 42 County. Like I'm from Knuckles County. I don't get dressed up for nothing, It's
right.
It takes a lot for me to get out of my boots or running shoes, and I don't feel comfortable doing it. And when I'm there, I've had people say, hey, well, just schmooze, fake it till you make it. I'm like, I don't really believe that, because I'm a firm believer that above all, authenticity matters. It comes across in your work. It comes across in your life. You have to be authentic towards you, yourself, and others in order to build the best foundation of relationships, work, professional, personal, otherwise, and just in how you go about yourself. And I think that the fake it till you make it mantra is fundamentally built on, while it may be temporarily successful, I mean, it's just fundamentally built on disingenuousness.
But it's built on shaky ground, which I'll quickly touch on, but we're going to talk about this more in the summer as it gets closer.
Yeah.
But it's part of the reason that I personally think the Colorado Buffalo situation might have some minor success, but it's ultimately going to fail, because you can't rah-rah your way to winning championships.
Yeah.
It's going to have to be built on a solid foundation of something bigger than one person.
Yeah.
One person and his son.
Yeah. Well, and it's especially at Division I, Power 5 FBS football, it takes so many key cogs and components.
And everybody's got to have a common message that's bigger than one person,
Yeah.
bigger than themselves. You have to have that bigger message. I was having conversations last night with my two boys about social media stuff and how to do all this stuff. And I was telling the older one, who's also going to be jumping in doing podcasting and stuff like that, that I told him, I said, you need to go. I gave him an assignment last night. I said, I want you to go home, pour yourself a bourbon, and I want you to sit down and I want you to figure out two things. I want you to figure out what your why is, and your why can't be money.
Yeah.
It can't be to monetize it. It can't be to build a client base. Your why has to be something bigger than that. And two, to go write himself a mission statement. Because I've always found writing the mission statement, the mere process of doing that, forcing yourself to economize words. And if you can't get your mission statement down to 2 sentences, it's too long.
Yeah.
Right. And that will help you clarify that mission statement will help you have your consistent message that whenever you want to try something or try something new, you can measure it against that and go, does that fit here? Right. And what we're talking about inside, and what I wanted to talk a little bit more about, and as it pertains to what's going down in Lincoln and what goes on in our profession, was, how do you build that self-confidence in yourself and also in another group of people, like a team?
Yeah.
Right. And how you build that, and why that fake it till you make it is built on a shaky foundation. I found this quote kept coming up in my social media feeds to the point that I damn near had it memorized, but I did write it down. It's from some guy, I don't know who it is, some guy, Alex Hormozy, and it says, you don't become confident by shouting affirmations in the mirror, but by having a stack of undeniable truth that you are who you say you are. Outwork your self-doubt.
Yeah.
Right. And that hit with me because I've always, even though I didn't have words to it in my head, that's exactly like the tack that I've taken most of my career.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I can sit there and say that I'm awesome. I'm awesome. I can make all the pictures. I'm awesome. But you still have to go out there and do it. And there's no confidence that goes along, like this quote says, to having a stack of your foundation built on a stack of proof.
Yeah.
That you can do this, and the same thing goes for you and what you guys do on the word side. You've done it over and over and over. So,
yeah,
you can even walk into somewhere I don't know, recording a podcast on the Tuesday afternoon, not 100% sure what you were going to talk about, but that you could come up with something.
I don't know where you pulled that from.
Right. And make it great.
Yeah. Well, and it's one thing, it kind of goes in line with that. It's be comfortable with being uncomfortable. I mean, I spoke with a couple of Bill Dolman's classes at UNL. I spoke with one last semester and I spoke with two this semester. And, aspiring young, not everyone wanted to be a sports reporter, but they're in a sports journalism class. Some want to go into PR. Some just want to talk about sports. Some want to go to writing, all that. And one thing that I feel like needs to get across is there are days where it's tough. It's undeniably, it's cool that we get to cover sports and we get to be a part of this grand scheme that, so many people get enjoyment out of, and it used as a relaxing thing. But it's tough. It can be a grind. It can be taxing.
Quite often it's a grind.
And it's just, and like with any other job or any other thing, there are some days where you're like, I just really don't want to do this.
I just really don't want. Yep, it's 100 degrees outside. I just really, really don't want to go sit on that turf. That's going to be 120.
Yeah, but regardless of if it's a game or a practice or even just a spot assignment shoot or a feature to do, you learn that, hey, I'm going to get something out of this. I've got to get up. The work's got to get done. It's farmer's mentality for me.
Right.
I mean, the chores got to get done. I'm the only one here, and it's 5:00 in the morning. Regardless of if I want to do it, it's got to get done. So I'm going to go do it.
Yeah, and it's that in terms of in what we do versus dirt versus football. It's that, well, I mean, it's kind of the same mentality, I guess. But I was in those moments when I just really don't want to. I'm not feeling it today. I don't want
Yeah.
that. I've always said when I'm having conversations with other photographers, up and coming photographers, or people trying to make the transition from part time to full time pro. The mark of the pro, I always say, show me the pictures that you made on the day you didn't want to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. That to me is the mark of a professional. I've been there, done that. There have been days when I just really didn't want to be there. Right.
Yeah.
Were you able to do, or the assignment was just like,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
You still able to do your job, do what was expected, and maybe exceed it just a little bit on a day that you just didn't want to get off the couch.
Yeah.
That's the mark of a professional. It's not how much money you make or what kind of clients you have. It's what kind of work do you produce on your less than motivated days.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. There's so many times where, I'm sure you're the same way. There's so many times for me that I'll go back in my head and think like, I'd like to go back to this event, or give me this story back. I'd like to write this a little bit different. There are just so many and like big feature story ideas that I had that I executed, but I wish like I could have. I wish I had the intelligence and experience I have now to go back and treat those stories differently.
Well, you're just talking. Yeah, you want to talk like that. That's just the 90s for me. Can you imagine what I could do with today's skill set and knowledge in the 90s?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
But at the same time, like, you got to recognize that whatever you do tomorrow is probably going to be at least a little bit better than today, simply because you have more experience. You're teaching yourself every single day. And like for me, and I'm sure you're the same way, looking at photographers' work or taking in all of, photography content, I'm reading other people's things, trying to take in as much as I can to better myself, or at least like funnel through, get the best writers, get people I look up to, or things to improve myself or tweak myself. How do I write about this? Or here's a story idea, or here's an angle of a story, or a new twist on something that, could be done here at Nebraska, or it could be something worth looking into at Nebraska. Like, right. These are things that the professionalism of like going in and blue collar mentality of getting it done, working hard. You don't have to think innovative, but like if you just keep your shoulder down to the grindstone, you just keep going. And then the more you get used to it, the more you're in there, then like it unlocks new ideas. It unlocks just a new mentality of when you're there and in it, it's just, I don't know. You get seasoned, you get calloused by the bad things, but you end up just like, you find out what you like and you stick to it.
Yep. And do more of that. It's like shooting tennis the other day.
Yeah.
Most people would go, oh, go and shoot tennis. Well, I mean, it was on the drive down there. It was a beautiful day, just like today. And it was, we had some beautiful smoke sent to us from Kansas in the air that was going to make for an amazing sunset.
Yeah.
And by the time I got down there, I was like, my mindset was, I had convinced myself by the time I had driven down there that I was going to make Brandon and Quentin redesign the magazine.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. Wound up, I was telling Brandon to sidetrack just a little bit, because how I've talked about how you should sit in on
the photo
selection calls.
Yeah.
Our photo selection call yesterday was like an hour and a half. All the rest of the photos, like the baseball and the softball and everything, that took us like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
The rest of the time was trying to decide which tennis photos we were going to put in the magazine. Right. And it was like, it took us almost an hour to choose which photos were going to go in the magazine. Mm. So that's the wonderful problem to have. But I found myself thinking, God, one, we should have been recording this.
Yeah.
It would have been great, like behind the scenes, how the donuts are made kind of thing. And two, this would have been a great one for Brady to sit in for part of it, because want to for an hour, but uh,
I don't know.
there was a lot of, and we had to get down into the minutia and make very intentional, purposeful decisions on what we were doing and why we were doing it.
Yeah.
In fact, the whole discussion started with a why. Like,
Yeah.
you know, let's just figure out the why, and then the decisions after that followed. Right? It's kind of like a tree branches, right? You make this decision, and then these other decisions are available to you, but these are not.
Yeah.
And so you kind of wander down that road, and then you somehow you wind up getting the task accomplished. But I'll just take that as a nice segue into the other thing that I wanted to talk about, which both of these concepts of the workman-like farmer blue collar approach, and the other thing that I think is super important is the why.
Yeah.
Right. Understanding your why. It's probably the thing I talk about the most when I'm talking to newer photographers, and primarily younger photographers, is understanding your why, both on a macro and a micro scale. Like, in a general sense, why do you want to be a photographer? And it's got to be a little bit more than just I'm passionate about it, because the passion and the fire is only going to carry you so far.
Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned, and that ties back into some of the other things. You got to have something a little more concrete. And personally, I believe it's got to be something external. Like, it can't be, I'm passionate about it and I want to make money.
Yeah.
First thing I tell you, if you want to make money, don't become a photographer. Promise you that.
That's good advice.
I told Mitch that. The whole, like, another sidetrack, kid story. His like sophomore year in high school, he applies for and becomes the photo editor for the student newspaper as a sophomore, right? And so, you know, he gets like half a semester into that, and he comes home one day and he says, "Dad, this photojournalism thing's a lot of fun." And I didn't even let him finish the sentence. I looked at him and said, "No, no, no, no."
Somebody's got to make money around here.
If you want to be underappreciated and underpaid, I'd rather you be a teacher.
Hey,
you'd be doing something.
Shout out teachers out there.
Yeah, I mean, you'd be doing something worthwhile in your life that way. I said, "No, you are not going to go into photojournalism." So, and it was shortly after that he picked up a video camera and blah, blah, blah. Now he's doing great things, and I don't have to worry about him. But he came to understand his why. You know, what's my driving purpose? And that's one thing that I think, and I'm going to roll this back into Lincoln real quick. I think Matt is supremely confident and comfortable with his why.
Yeah.
Why he gets out of bed in the morning is not, I would be willing to bet if you could sit down with him and ask him that his why is not football.
Yeah, for sure.
His why won't be because I'm passionate about football. His why will be because I'm passionate about these young men.
Yeah.
I'm passionate about building them into better young men. I'm passionate about things external to himself and his own, what he wants and desires.
Yeah.
I very much get that vibe from him. And I, you know, let's knock on wood wherever there's some wood. I firmly believe that, you know, his success is going to be because of that.
Yeah. Well, and it kind of already, I wouldn't say, it already has. I mean, he had a really bounce around successful, somewhat successful, not financially successful, assistant coaching spree. I mean, Albright College all the way around Western Carolina, moving around to Temple, New York Giants temporarily before going back to Temple and being a head coach. And he kind of built some sustainability at Temple where it wasn't a whole-scale rebuild there, but they haven't seen the same sort of results since he's been there. Baylor, I mean, I don't think people understand how bad Baylor could still be a laughingstock now if Matt Rule did not do the job that he did.
It probably would have been another SMU.
I mean,
death set.
it the first season obviously was bad, but also they had like half of their scholarships available, like half players on scholarship available, and then within 2 years, they're within a shoestring tackle of making the playoff. I mean, it was remarkable. Things don't work out at the NFL level. That's fine. I could name you a dozen and successful college coaches that don't work out in the NFL. But like, he surrounds himself with the guys who feel the same way. He talked about if he wanted to just count his money, he would have taken the buyout from the Panthers and just like watch his kids grow up.
Yep.
But he wanted to be a part of like coaching young men and helping them along. Garrett McGuire today, when talking about, he even mentioned my why I get to know my guys a little bit better because Marcus Washington has a 1-year-old daughter and he got to like meet her and say like, okay, I understand Marcus a little bit more now because he's struggling
because he understands Marcus's why.
Exactly. So they all have a similar idea. They're all wanting to get to know. Eric, we'll open it up. What is your why?
My why? Well, I'll start with a micro level. Like my why, when I'm working for Hail Varsity magazine, let's just grab that because that's mostly what we talk about. My why, when I pick up my cameras for Hail Varsity, is to capture images that say the things that Brady can't.
Okay. In
a way that Brady can't say them.
Yeah.
Right. And I was thinking, that's funny you asked it because I was thinking about kind of this very thing when I was driving around earlier. And what popped into my head for some reason was an image I made 2 years ago at Michigan State.
Yep.
Of the punt return.
Oh,
the punt return. Right. And I remember seeing it in the camera, and I shot to the focus to the fans behind. I didn't shoot the runner. I focused to the fans.
Yeah.
Right. And they were losing their minds. Right. Now, Brady could write. You could describe that picture. You could write the words to describe that picture, but I don't know that you could adequately put the words together. Maybe you're better than I think. That would give the gut punch that I feel when I see that picture.
Yeah.
I see that picture and I just feel a gut punch because that's what it was. It was like, we had the freaking game in our hands and they kicks the ball to the place where nobody is.
Yeah.
Coverage wise, and that was a gut punch. And so when I get back to my why, that's kind of how I see my job at the magazine is to make images of things in a way that provides kind of a subtextual or subconscious deeper understanding of what we're covering. Like I said, basically say something that would be very difficult for Brady to say.
Yeah.
And I can say it in an instant.
Yeah. And people put it up on their walls. We put it at, double truck in the magazine.
Right. But there's a reason. So that's my why is that, and that's my job, is to provide some of the feeling to the magazine and to our subscribers and to all of that. It's easy enough with as good as the cameras are now. I could take you, and in a year you would be competent enough with the gear to make sports pictures.
Maybe.
No, you could. I mean, how good they are is a relative thing, but you could make sports pictures because the gear is that good. I don't want to make sports pictures, which is ironic because I work at a sports magazine.
Yeah.
Right. I don't want to make sports pictures. I want to make timeless pictures that have feeling to them. Mm-hmm. Right. Which is part of the reason we had trouble with the tennis the other day, because it was men's tennis and those guys are really intense. We don't cover a lot of tennis, so I wasn't well versed in Those guys are really intense. They scream and yell after every point.
Oh yeah, every swing.
Well, not that's the grunt. I'm talking about like every point they win.
Oh yeah, yeah,
There's a, I mean, there's an audible and visual
yeah,
expression of winning that point, and they do it every point they win. So there was a lot of it, and I was pleasantly surprised because it was wonderful to shoot that kind of intensity. But that's what I wasn't shooting. Wasn't as much shooting tennis as I was shooting the competitors
yeah,
and the shooting the competition.
yeah.
Did I answer your question?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. No, that's a good why.
Yeah, it's to understand your why. And sometimes that why can be little things like what's my why today versus my why in general. Like my why today might be, ooh, I got a new bed.
Yeah,
Sometimes that's my why.
yeah,
Ooh, I got a new camera. Or, ooh, I saw this other guy's picture and it made me think of something else. That might be my why today. And that's enough. But you have to have a why. You can't just be picking up the cameras and going and shooting sports.
yeah, for sure.
You got to have just have a why is all I ask for people. And that ties back into what I talk about all the time is having intention. What do you want to do? Why do you want to do it? Do more of that.
Yeah, 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 for sure, for sure. Because like for me, I think about my why in sports of like the sports kind of are ancillary, but it's also important because I want to tell the stories of people, like actual people. I want to tell the stories about human beings and their involvement in their struggle, their triumphs and their tragedies. I want to tell the story of the grand human experience. And sports magically can really shed a light into people and society at large. This gives us a vehicle to look into people of all walks of life, ability, disability, all around the spectrum of humanity. This, sports is a great vehicle for that. If you think about in history, some of the greatest socioeconomic or movements in humanity have a tangible like sporting event point to it. Jesse Owens, Muhammad Ali. We have or even the miracle on ice, to a lesser extent. We all point, we can point to it. And
they all have a picture in your head.
And they all have a picture in my head. And that's what I'm thinking about. Actually, and while we're on it, actually, this might be a good, there's one that sticks out in my brain, back from when I was covering Wyoming. I was covering a cross country meet. I'm full disclosure here. I never ran cross country. I played football. So I really had no idea what I was doing in terms of like writing about cross country. But just before I left Lincoln for the first time, I kind of got on a fitness kick and started running around Holmes Lake for a couple of months. And then that kind of bumped me up. So one cross country meet I'm covering there, it's a big one. They've got the two JV races before the two varsity races. And there was one that I noticed, Jackson High, Jackson Hole, very great endurance athletes over there. I'll give you 3 guesses why, but you only need one. They're outdoors a lot. And there's one group of them had like purple jerseys on, and their colors aren't purple. They're an orange and black team, but they had like purple pennies on over them. And I'm just kind of curious, and I'm kind of watching them a little bit. And then, the day kind of goes by. I'm not really like, I'm there trying to get ready for the varsity races and things like that. So I'm not like following them all the way, but I'm trying, keeping an eye out if I see them. Come to find out that they had a blind runner on their team. So then I'm like, I missed it, but then they come back around for conference. So I'm reached out to the coach, plan things ahead. I'm like, I want to do a story on this because this is fascinating to me. So basically what I learned through my reporting and talking with them is, they've got a young girl who, I think she was like a year or younger, like fell and hits, something that made her lose like long-term vision of her eyesight, or she's very nearsighted. She's able to see in close proximities, but for intents and purposes of most society, she needs just help, walking around. And she wanted to compete. she wanted to be a part of sports because she wanted to have friends. She wanted to be out and about and have, like, your stereotypical kid experience. And the coach in response said, okay, we're going to have every single one of our runners trained to accompany, trained to help her run around the courses, to help her walk around at school, all of that stuff. And one of them was like an all-state runner who was going to, I think she ended up running at Cornell, I think. But then I talked with them, and my story was basically like, kind of, it works out because of the format, but was just describing the crunching of the leaves, describing the last 100 yards that she had where, her guide kind of backs off and it's just her, just running unencumbered, and like what she is perceiving as she's running towards the finish line. She can hear the cries, she can hear the guidance, she can hear the cheers, she can hear, her, basically her blood pumping up, from her heart through her neck up to her ears and brain and everything like that.
That's pretty cool.
And just like the burning in the lungs, as everything's going at that time. And I thought, like, those are cool stories that you can tell those otherwise, but it almost is like ancillary if you don't have sports. Like, sports is an avenue for things like that. With Nebraska football now, like, there are great personable stories. Our annual yearbook is a really good example. We get personal, like, people vested interest stories. People are going to cheer for the Huskers, but if they've got a good feature, a good story on someone involved with the Huskers, like a standout, they say, well, now I like that guy more. Or
you understand their individual
you understand their thing a little bit more. And then it's not just I cheer for the Huskers. It's, here are the people that are of the team I cheer for. I like that. And then on a smaller level now, covering the Huskers and being the beat guy, I want to tell all of that, or the context and rationale for things to make better informed fans and better informed followers of it, which you can kind of bubble down into whatever, but it's all, we're all people. We're all just here learning and doing all of that. And football, there's wins and losses, but they kind of come, apart from the drive. And the more important thing is getting to the work. You know what I mean?
And while you were telling your story, for some reason, what popped into my head was all my 25 years of doing the College World Series, largely for the Associated Press, where we kind of worked at it as a team. There was a number of us and we were in different spots. But as teams would start getting eliminated over the years, I always found myself over with people who just lost and were going home.
Yeah.
Right. And even after the championship thing, every other photographer was trying to get the celebration, and I would go click, click, click. Okay, I forgot it. And I'm over shooting the dejection. And over years, everybody was like, there's Eric, the dejection guy. And somebody asked me one time, why do you spend so much time trying to shoot the dejection? And I said, well, for a few reasons. One, as a former coach, at the time I was still coaching, I think in the dejection, in a situation like that, is where you see all the hard work.
Yeah, 100%.
It's easy to get wrapped up in the winners, the people who won, because it's easy to be the winner, right? If you want, it's not easy to get there, but it's easy to be the winner. Right. Once you've won, that's easy.
Yeah.
Right? That's everybody wants to win. Everybody's going to be happy when they won. I want to look at the people who woke up this morning expecting to beat those guys, but now they're these guys. And on every one of those faces is where I saw, the early morning workouts and the summer in the heat, and that's where I saw all of that. And then on top of that, I wanted to make sure that I could communicate that everything that I see in them in a respectful way.
Yeah.
Because they're in a very vulnerable state, and the emotions are raw and they're right there. And I'm not going to be that guy that walks up right in front of them with a wide angle lens to make the picture. So you got to work with the telephoto lens, and it's a little harder.
Yeah.
to work that far away and work the angles, make a composition, and make it impactful. But that was probably a period of time where I really started to figure out my own why as it pertained to sports photography.
Yeah. In fact, you saying that brings up one. It was state wrestling one year, and I can't remember the young man's name. He's from Waverly, so apologies if you're out there. He was facing Ben Stilley in the championship match, and obviously everybody thinks Ben Stilley. I mean, he's signed, committed, going to the Huskers and everything. He's going to be a future NFLer. And I'd cover this kid from Waverly and like talked with him after his semifinal match and leading up to the final, and he felt good. You rested on his training and everything, and then you, it was just, it was one of those instances where I'm like, sometimes talking to the kid who doesn't win might it makes for a better story sometimes in my opinion, because afterwards, I get up there talking to Ben because he won, he's state champion. And, if you got three TV stations and people just trying to talk to him, like, let's talk to this Husker. When do you join the team kind of thing? And then through the bowels of, at that time, I think it was the Quest Center. I don't know. It's the Chai, whatever you want to, the Mocha over there by TD Ameritrade. And I find the kid from Waverly and I'm like, hey, do you have time? And he's like, yeah, hold on, just give me, and basically he had to go cry. He had to
Right.
air it out afterwards. And then I kind of catch him as I'm walking back to my seat. He's like, you said time? He's like, yeah, sure. And I asked him, he's just like, I'm going to go wrestle somewhere. I just love this. I can't imagine doing anything else. This isn't the end for me. Like, this is short of my goal, but I'm going to go wrestle somewhere. See, you had this kid who basically had his whole future kind of planned out in gold. And then this other kid, Scrappy, definitely didn't look the same as Ben Stilley. It's like, I'm just going to make it. I'm just going to keep clawing to make it. And I thought that's such a human story again. And it's just told through sports. It's, I don't know. And best of luck. I don't know whatever happened to that kid. I can't remember your name, but I really hope things worked out, because that's really, it also takes a kid of pretty good maturity to say that and to be like, it didn't work out this time, but this isn't the end of the story kind of thing.
Yeah. And you got to think that a kid like that is probably had a good college career.
Yeah.
Somewhere.
Yeah. That's his Joker origin story, for lack of a better term. Like, that's the calling card. That's the monolith.
Right. All right. Did we wrap it all up with that? Is there anything else you wanted to touch on? Did you have a thought experiment? Or did we have to throw this out too soon? It's okay if you don't.
Well, here's my thought experiment, and I guess this is more of a philosophical question. To the point of hard work and blue collar mentality, do you believe that there are preordained teams or individuals to be successful?
Preordained teams or individuals? Teams, I'll say no. As we know, as we've come to know in Husker land, the team is dependent on the coach.
Yeah.
Right. I think teams reach a place where it becomes easier. Right. Georgia's there now, where their life is going to be a little bit, they could coast for a while if they wanted to. They'll still be successful.
The wheels are self-sustaining.
Right. Alabama, Nebraska in the 90s, when you get to that point, once you get that rock rolling, it's going to be much less effort to keep it rolling. Individuals, I absolutely believe that certain people are wired for success more than others. Absolutely. And some of that is genetic. Some of it will be environmental as well.
Yeah.
There's a reason that for years and most of our growing up, they went and found offensive linemen off of farms, right? It was because they had functional strength and they had the bodies to do it. Because if you were going to survive genetically across generations, you were going to survive farm life, probably were a bigger boy.
Yeah.
Right. And two,
no big deal.
But two, that environment, right? You were raised to, like, the cows don't give a shit if you're sick.
Yeah.
They need to be milked and fed, and right.
Yeah.
So there was that workman mentality that came along that was required for a position like that. So there was a reason. I absolutely think and I just think through some of my friends and some of the people in my life. Some of them, I know people, and I'm sure you know people, that you look at them do what they do, and you think it doesn't matter what they do. They could do anything, and they're going to be successful because they're just wired that way.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't matter if they wanted to be a props designer in a theater, or they wanted to be an executive director at some organization. They're going to freaking rock it because they're wired that way.
Yeah.
Now, there's lots of other things that play into it, but to answer your question, I absolutely believe that some people are just wired better for success. I'm not sure I'm one of those people. I question it from sometimes. So
no, that makes sense. It makes sense why we respond, because I think we have a similar mentality on it.
Yeah, I told my boys all the time when they were growing up and being athletes, because they're far better athletes than I ever was. I told them, listen, I had to work 3 times as hard as everybody else just to be average.
Yeah.
I played football with guys that just were born with immense amounts of physical ability.
Yeah.
And I just had to outwork them to get my playing time, to do what I loved. So, but I loved it that much that I was willing to do the work. Some of them didn't love it enough, and they squandered great physical gifts. Hopefully they went on in life to do other things with them, but
yeah.
So that's my answer to that. What do you think on that one?
It's kind of similar. Stick with me here. I'm going to get a little new agey, because this is something I truly believe in. To the point about stories and believing in people's stories, I think some things are written in the stars. I like some individuals, teams, coincidences, whatever it may be. Like there are certain, I don't want to say that they're already predetermined by the cosmos, but there are some stories and some teams, some individuals that stand out and are almost set up for success. But I also firmly believe that destiny doesn't grant permission. You can't wait around and it picks you at that given time. Right. You've got to go seize it. You got to go chase it. You got to grab it. Like, again, it's the Red Sox. Good example of Red Sox won the World Series in 2004, and they break the curse of the Bambino and all of that. Team of destiny, seemingly, but they were down 3-0 to the Yankees in the ALCS, and they win the first 2 in extra innings. That's a team that just didn't give up. They kept clawing. It wasn't like they were just like, "Hey, this is our year. You know, come give us our World Series." Like, they faced their rival head on, and they fell down 3-0, and no team across, except I think it happened twice in the NHL, but in no other sport in America's major sports had any team ever come back from 3-0. And they did it to beat the Yankees, and then they swept the Cardinals, because at that point they were invincible. But they knew that they had to finish it off. Same thing with like the Miracle on Ice. They beat the Russians to do all that. They had to go beat Finland that very next time.
Yeah, and as you were making your point, the first thing that popped into my mind was I remember telling everybody, and everybody looked at me like I was crazy. I told everybody, I said, UCF's going to beat Auburn.
Yeah.
No way, not going to happen. They're out of their league. I said, no. This team has a vibe around them. I don't think they believe you when you say that.
Yeah.
They don't believe that they can't play with Auburn. They don't believe it.
Yeah.
And I should have like laid my entire worth on that game, because I would have gotten good odds. But so that's my thought on that.
No, I think that pretty much does. Again, hard work, blue collar mentality. Go up out there. The hardest thing is doing the work, and if you keep doing it, plugging away, good things will happen.
What's that? I'll end it with that other quote. And God, now I can't remember who said it, but how's it go? A man who understands his why can bear any how.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now I'm gonna have to go look it up because that one's one that always sticks in my head. If you understand your why, you can bear any how.
Yeah. That's going up on the Zanga and Tumblr pages tonight.
All right, awesome. All right, well, we'll end it there. You've been with Brady and Eric on the eye test. Come back. I promise we're going to get more consistent with these. And we got some great guests lined up. We can get their schedules to gel with our schedules. You're going to love it. So come back when you can. Take care.
A Hurrdat Sports Network production.